Welcome to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good evening. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guests tonight are two young blackjack players, Kyle and Di, who were detained by the Virgin River Casino in Mesquite, Nevada. The players sued and the case went to court, and through a combination of court ruling and negotiation, the case is now over. We'll be talking about that case. In some ways, this is a bit awkward. We're taping this show in late April for airing on June 5th. As it airs, Bonnie and I are on a honeymoon, and we'll be in the Adriatic Sea somewhere. And that in itself isn't so bad, hopefully. The awkward part is that Bob Nersesian, the attorney for this particular case, we're going to be talking after we tape this show, but before it airs. So there is some overlap. So that's a bit awkward, but somehow we'll survive. All right, let me introduce the current players. The two guests. Both men are in their 20s. Kyle is a mechanical engineer graduate from the University of Saskatchewan, and Di is just finishing up an MBA program at UNLV. Kyle and Di, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thanks.
All right, now I suppose it's unfair, but my mind free associates sometimes. Now the names Kyle and Di put together remind me of the all-time best name for a hair salon, which would be Curl Up and Die. Now, I don't suppose you guys are also hairdressers, are you?
No.
No, all right, they deny it. All right, so you were hole carding at the Virgin River Casino in Mesquite, which is 90 or so miles north and east of Las Vegas, about 2.5 years ago. Di, why don't you start out and tell us what happened?
Okay, I can kind of tell the first half because the second half was more Kyle anyway. So, yeah, we were hole carding a blackjack game, and that's actually they never figured that out until we went to court a week ago. They actually figured us out because I was in Griffin and didn't know it at the time. So I got approached by the shift manager who said, hey, your game's too good. You have to leave. So I said, okay. Another pit boss comes up and says, actually, you're going to get trespassed and you need to leave the entire property. So I said, okay, well, I have a hotel room. My bags are in the hotel. And I have some chips in the hotel that I forgot to bring down with me from earlier in the day. So security was like, okay, so security comes up to me and says, hey, we need your ID. And I said, no. And they said, all right, well, come into the back room with us and we'll read you the Trespass Act. And I said, no.
You're being very disagreeable, Di.
Yeah. So they were like, well, okay, you have to leave. And I said, nope, I have to go get my chips and get my bag. So the security guard said, all right, we'll take you to your hotel room. You can get your stuff. You can get your chips. Then we'll escort you back down here. Then we'll escort you to your car. Then you can leave. So I said, okay, fine. So they escort me to my room, and on the way there, one guard is like, what's your name? Where are you from? What's your name? And I was just like, I'm not going to tell you. Like, I'm sorry. So we get to the room, and I knock on the door. Kyle opens it. Then two security guards follow me in, and right afterwards, a third security guard walks up the hallway and stands in the door and kind of puts his arms up against the door. So he's literally blocking the door. And then probably Kyle can take over right now because this is where he got pretty involved.
Yeah, at this point, I was already packed up. I had everything ready to go, so I said, you know what, I'll go and grab the car. And, yeah, right then, the third security guard just jumped in front of the door and said, basically, you guys aren't going anywhere until we get your IDs. And at this point, I'm not going to give up my ID because I don't want to be put in the database just like Dave is. This was back near the start of my career, I guess you'd say. And I still had a feeling that I wasn't in the books somehow, which at this point we're in there multiple times now. But, yeah, this is basically when the false imprisonment started to happen, I guess. And then after that, they started taking pictures of us and just repeatedly asking us for our ID, which we knew that legally we had the right to not give it to them.
When you say they were taking pictures of you, so they just sort of whipped out cameras, or was it their phones and trying to take pictures of you? What was that?
Yeah.
What were they doing?
One of the security guards just whipped out a digital camera and just started snapping. They actually got one good one of me because I just didn't see it coming at all.
But you were sort of putting your hand in front of your face for once you noticed that that's what he was doing?
Yeah. After that, I don't even think they got any good ones of Dave because he knew what was happening, but the very first picture caught me totally off guard.
At this point, I guess Dave and Di are the same guy for anybody who wants to know. But Curl Up and Dave just doesn't make nearly as good of a joke to start with. But now, Dave was backed off at the table, but did you know what was happening when they came up to the room?
I guess I could figure it out.
By context, yeah, I guess that's a pretty dumb question, okay.
But no, before that, I wasn't sure that we were going to get thrown out of our hotel because, I've been backed off before where I had a hotel or even trespassed, but there's really no need to kick you out of the hotel because it's tough to play blackjack in your hotel room.
Strip blackjack's a lot of fun.
Yeah, when they came up, then I kind of figured that, okay, we're leaving. But before this point, I had no real intention of leaving.
Now, were you paying for the hotel room, or was this on a comp?
Yeah,
We paid for it, actually.
Yeah, right when we found the dealer we liked earlier in the day, which is why I had chips left over later, our dealer basically immediately went on break. So we decided to get a hotel room, and I paid up front for 2 nights on my credit card under my real name. So we paid.
So the casino's really stupid here since they already have your name if they just look at the hotel.
Oh, they had my name. I had gotten a player's card, and we had shown our IDs to the dealer. So when security started asking for my ID, I was just laughing. I knew exactly what they wanted it for. They called the hotel because I told them I didn't remember my room number. They called the hotel and said, hey, this is his name. What's his room number? So everyone was in agreement. They already had my name. That's what was so funny about this.
So it was just harassment, or?
Yeah. They just wanted, I don't know. They had a scanned copy of my ID at the Players Club. It was pretty unbelievable, actually.
Wow.
Were you physically threatened, other than the guy standing in the doorway, who I assume was 8'5" and weighed 400 pounds? But other than that, did they physically threaten you, or were you fearful of your life or anything like that?
Security guards didn't threaten us, but they did. We didn't quite get there yet, but they did call the police, and the police officer was threatening us. Kyle can tell that part. He was interacting with the police officer.
All right, Kyle, what happened?
First thing, right when the cop showed up, the security guard moves out of the door and moves right back into position in front of the door, just kind of to let him in. It was pretty funny, actually. It was almost like we were in a little jail cell. But then once the cop shows up, he goes, okay, what's going on here? And security says, well, we really need his ID, and we're trying to trespass him. And I just said, well, I'm already trying to leave, so you should probably just let me leave now, because I'm not going to give you my ID. And he says, well, in the state of Nevada, you have to be able to show me ID at any time.
This is the policeman says this.
This is the policeman. So at this point, I just said, well, that is not the law. I don't have to give you my ID because I haven't done anything wrong. As far as you know, I'm just sitting in my hotel room. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. No crime being committed or anything like that. So I'm not going to give it to you. And then he said, well, the casino has the right to it, and basically started yelling and threatening jail, which for me is a pretty big deal because I'm a Canadian, so I don't want to go to jail too badly and probably get deported or not allowed back into the U.S. So at this point, I just said, okay, I'll show you my ID because really I don't care if a cop has my ID. That's not the end of the world. The people I don't want to have it are the casino because I can almost guarantee the next day I'm going to be in the Griffin book or something like that. So I told him that. He said, oh, yeah, that's fine. And then I kind of power tripped on him a little bit right after this and repeated it all really slowly and said, you do not have the right to give it to security. And at this point, he's furious with me because there's a young 20-year-old talking back to him. And so he got it from me and basically instantly handed it over to the casino security. And both at the same time, me and Dave were just kind of like, oh, that was a bad idea, bud.
Now,
And what did the security guard do with it? Just look at it and hand it back? I mean...
They actually just started furiously copying down any tiny bit of information, whether it was helpful to them or not. I'm really not sure why they needed my passport so badly, but they got it.
Now, Kyle's on the other end of a telephone line, so I'm not looking at him. Dave's here in the studio, and he's young. And presumably, had they phrased it of, we need to verify that you're over 21 because you're in a casino, if they had phrased it that way, you guys presumably would have had to show your ID at that point. Is that correct?
Well, that's true, but the thing is...
That's true in the casino. It's not true in their hotel room.
Right. And in the casino, I had showed my ID and Kyle had to the dealer. I had shown it to the hotel.
Is that because for age reasons?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We immediately were both Kyle wasn't even playing earlier in the day, but the dealer said, I need your ID too. He was just standing there, but a lot of dealers are instructed to card anyone who looks young because they can get in big trouble for that. So, I mean, in the room, if security was like, oh, we have to make sure you're 21, I would have just laughed. I mean, like, I know what you're doing. This is pretty obvious. Because everyone knew we were 21. They all admitted no one thought we had committed a crime or were doing anything wrong.
All right.
Now, when this all started in the hotel room, and especially once they started taking pictures, did you guys at any point think about videotaping or audio taping what was going on?
Yeah, that didn't occur to us until later that night, but yeah, we were like, oh man, when they took pictures of us, we should have videoed the whole thing. We should have taken pictures. We should have live streamed it onto YouTube and narrated it. Like,
Yeah, just for our listeners, I have an app on my phone that's called. I believe the name of the app is Police Tape, and it has ACLU on it, and it's an app that when it opens, it shows your screen as black, so you don't whoever it is you're videoing and audio taping doesn't even know it. So that would have been my first thought. As soon as it started, I would have started taping.
Yeah, I'm gonna download that immediately. That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, doing it in front of them when they're escorting him back to the hotel, it doesn't sound like they would have treated this as a friendly gesture on his part. Okay, so they got your ID. They basically kicked you out. Did they let you cash your chips? Did they get your money back for the night you weren't there in the hotel room? How'd that go down?
Well, one part I thought was pretty funny was Kyle gave his passport and I gave my driver's license to the cop, and the cop handed it to the security guards. And one of the security guards said, does he have anything else? And the cop looks at Kyle and goes, give me your driver's license. So Kyle gave it to them, too, because they weren't just happy. They were just using the police to do their work, which was pretty messed up.
Which wasn't even their work. They were just sort of, I don't know what they were doing.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but in trial, the security guard said why he did all this, and I almost started laughing in the courtroom. But, okay, all right, we give our identification, and the security guard in the door looks at me and goes, hey, you know those chips you have? You better keep those as a souvenir because we're not going to let you cash them. And I just looked at Kyle. I was just stunned. I was like, what are you talking about?
How much are we talking about?
It was only $250 in chips.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, you're not cooperating with us, so we're not going to cooperate with you. And Kyle looks at the police officer and says, hey, officer, you better stick around because these guys are about to break the law and not let us cash our chips. And the officer was like, yeah, there'll be an officer here. It's fine. So at that point, everybody leaves the room. The officers go first, and both officers immediately get in their car and leave. So there'll be an officer here, that wasn't true. So we get escorted back to our car, and we put our stuff in the car, and I turned around with the chips in my hand to the security guard and say, hey, I have these chips. I need to go cash them. You can take me in there if you want, but I have to cash them. I'll come back, and we'll leave. And he said, if you take one more step towards Virgin River, I'm going to call the police and arrest you for trespassing. And I said, well, maybe I'll call the police because you're breaking the law. And he goes, you know what? You might as well just call your attorney. And we were like, what are you talking about? So he says, see that casino across the street? Just try to go cash your chips over there. And the casino across the street had no affiliation, total different casino. And we said, no, that's not their chips. We're not going to go in there. And he's like, well, we're not cashing them. So at that point, I took my chips with me. We got in our car and we left.
Did you call the hotel?
Yep. About 5 minutes later, I called the hotel, and they said, well, the front desk agent really was confused because I was like, well, this is kind of weird, but I just got thrown out of your hotel, but I'm wondering if I can get my money back. I mean, at least for tomorrow night. And she said, well, it's our policy if you used the room today that we have to charge you for it because we have to pay housekeeping. Yeah. But, we should be able to give you your money back for tomorrow night. So I figured we were all good, and then I actually kind of forgot about it. I just assumed I got it refunded until we went to our deposition over a year later, and their lawyer asked me to produce proof that I never got refunded, and I looked up my credit card statement, and they charged me for both nights and never refunded me.
All right, so now you're in Mesquite in your car, and you're. Did you decide to call a lawyer immediately, or did you wait a while? How did that happen? Well, so we drove back to Las Vegas and got a room
at the Bellagio, and I think, I don't remember exactly, it was 2.5 years ago, but I think probably even in the hotel room, Kyle and I were looking at each other and kind of had an understanding that what was going on was so messed up that we were going to call Bob Nersesian because he takes care of situations like this. So we actually wrote up a 3-page summary of what happened in our hotel room, which I definitely advise anyone to do if this happens to you, because 2.5
While
years...
your memory is still fresh.
2.5 years later, you forget things. And we thought 3 pages would be enough. If I could go again, I'd write 10 pages because so much little details come out in trial that you have to remember. So yeah, we wrote that down, and I think the next day we called Bob and said, hey, this is kind of a rough outline of our case. Are you interested? And he said, yeah, come to my office right now.
All right. So it's 2.5 years ago. It only got settled last week. So take us along this process. How long did it take to go to court? What issues were you suing for? Presumably the $250 was part of it, but you're not going to court over $250. So how did that go down?
Yeah, you want to talk about that, Kyle?
Sure. First of all, you just have to send kind of a demand letter saying we're going to sue you if you don't give us X amount of money, and list all the charges that you're going to sue for. I believe that our case somehow had about 12 or 14 different things that we were originally going to sue for. At the time, I understood about 2 of them, but that's what we have a good attorney for.
And how much did you ask for?
We asked for a penny under 200,000.
Is there a significance to a penny under 200,000? It's a whole lot harder to say 199,900, etc. Is there some magic? Is 200,000 a magic number in any way?
I'm not really sure. You'd have to ask Bob on that one. But
yeah,
it's a lot nicer than a nice round 200,000, because then I guess it's just like when you go and buy gas. The last cent is always 0.9 of a cent or something like that.
Bob kind of explained it to us, but that comes up later with our settlement, so I can explain it then.
Okay. All right. So you asked for 200,000. Forgive me, and they messed you up in 14 ways, and they immediately said, "Stick it in your ear." I assume something like that. That's a technical term.
They didn't offer any settlement at all?
Not for approximately 2 years, no.
Okay. And so then after 2 years, what did they offer?
They came back and offered us $20,250.
Well, we actually...
This was after we already lowered our offer
Yeah.
to somewhere around the range of, I think it was 110,000.
Was it a penny less? No, sorry, it doesn't matter. All right, so they refuse that one too, and then you start depositions and stuff.
Yeah, the depositions were a little bit before this. They actually sent in the offer. I think it was a day before our first trial date was set for, but in Nevada, or in Vegas at least, there's a pretty good chance that you're not actually going to go to trial on the first day that it's scheduled. We actually had to wait about 6 months, I think, just because there's such a backlog.
Yeah, you get put on what's called a stack, which is like a 6-week stack, and they say, all right, you're going to go to court. Well, you're going to get put on this 6-week stack in October. And me and Kyle didn't know what that was. And Bob's like, yeah, you might go then, you might not. So after that, we got pushed back to November. Then after that, we got pushed back to, I think it was April. But yeah, we had to wait we thought we were going in October and didn't end up there till April.
Now,
Now, the what the security guards said, that why they said they were doing these things, did this come out in the depositions, or did this come out in the trial?
We didn't see their security guard's deposition, I don't think, for a while. But no, it all came out in his deposition. Then it came out real clearly in the trial because he started actually contradicting what he said in his deposition, which Bob caught him on, which was not good for him.
So tell us about that.
Bob is a pit bull.
Yeah. Watching Bob in courtroom is quite something. Okay. So we went to court on Monday, and first you pick the jury, which took 4.5 hours, which is both lawyers interviewing everyone, and you can throw off certain potential jurors that you think basically aren't going to help you. Their lawyer threw off a lot of guys. I think we only ended up throwing off one. Were
there any members of the jury that worked for casinos at all?
Yeah, there was actually a security guard who used to work at Virgin River.
Oh, and he made it onto the jury?
No,
I would think the judge would throw him out.
No.
Nersesian had to throw him out?
Yeah. The guy was just like, yeah, I don't care. I can be fair. I'm not bothered by this. So he might have just been a security guard in Mesquite. I'm not sure, but definitely he might have been a security guard at the Casablanca, but he had to go. So I was the first witness that actually Thea Sankowitz is Bob Nersesian's wife and partner. I was the first witness, and I basically just went through everything that happened, all of the events, to kind of give a brief outline of what happened. Although Thea had an opening statement too. Then their lawyer got to cross-examine me, which is not a fun thing to go through because you kind of get prepped for what they're going to ask, but lawyers are pretty good at their job and they can kind of trip you up, and you have to think really hard about what you're saying because they can make you admit things that you don't even know you're admitting to, even though you didn't do anything wrong. So let's see. After me, was it the security guard next, or was it you, Kyle? I don't even remember.
Yeah, the security guard went next.
So this is in the plaintiff's. Is he called the security guard as a hostile witness, or because it would? Because I mean,
They were joint witnesses.
Joint witnesses. They were high.
They could be used
both
by
sides were calling
either party.
them, right?
All right. Good. So the one of the security guards was called.
Yeah, Kyle, do you want to explain his whole testimony? Because it was really something special.
Yeah, it was really weird, actually, because while Bob was examining him, he was talking with an extremely soft voice, and he looked like a frail old man that could never hold anybody in a jail or in a hotel room for any period of time, which at first glance didn't look very good on us. But the things that he was saying, he was basically admitting to everything and saying that he was just following upper management's decisions.
That worked real well in the Nuremberg trials, too.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were saying. So he basically just admitted to everything and said that that's what they've always done and it's not going to change, and it hasn't changed since he started working there, even though that was 13 years ago. And they always call the cops to help people or to help them get their ID. And he basically threw everybody under the bus, including himself.
Nice.
So you don't know where he's working now, but you have a good idea where he's not
retired
working.
now.
Yeah, he retired.
I'll bet.
So how did he contradict? What did he contradict from his deposition?
There was one part where they said, "Did you know that they were advantage gamblers?" And he said, "No, I just showed up. I have no idea." And then Bob was like, "I don't think that's right." So he looked at the deposition and found it in about 20 seconds and said, "You see this part right here that says you absolutely did know that they were advantage gamblers because your boss told you?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, maybe." So there was a few different instances that I can't exactly remember, but he wasn't doing very good up there. And then once their lawyer got to interview him, he changed completely. He actually lied and said that Dave swore at him right as soon as he walked up to him. And the whole time that he's telling his story to that lawyer, he was fast and everything he knew what he was going to say exactly. It was very well rehearsed. And I'm pretty sure that the jury could tell, because before this, every answer that he had to say was really thought out and took a long time to come out. But everything that this lawyer would ask him was instant and basically a blatant lie. and I think that the jury could actually tell this, which didn't really make him look very good.
Did Bob help the jury figure this out?
I believe he hinted at it a little bit. I don't think he really had to, though. It was really, really obvious.
So what was the defense's argument? That you guys were cheating and so they had the right to do this? Or, I mean, how did they try to defend their behavior?
Basically,
they never said that we were cheating or anything like that. They actually admitted multiple times that what we were doing was legal and that they had no idea what we were doing, basically. Their method of defense was basically to say what they didn't do. Like, that they never hit us or never arrested us.
That's good.
But Bob saw right through that one and basically told the jury, so just because they didn't hit them, or he said just because if a thief is going to go into somebody's house and steal the jewelry, but they didn't burn the house down, then I guess it's not that bad.
Right.
That's not a good way to look at things.
Their biggest defense, besides just saying what we didn't do, was they basically tried to say we were never held. They basically said there wasn't a third security guard in the doorway. He just never, like, he showed up for like 2 seconds and left, and which was just a lie. I mean, they just had to lie and say we were held there. And then Bob looked up in their employee manual and said, you have this procedure that says you need at least one more security guard than the amount of people you're holding. So didn't there have to be a third security guard there? And their lawyer was like, I don't know. Like, he might have been there. Like, they had this entire well-written list of procedures, and their security guard, one by one, was like, oh, no, we don't follow that. No, we don't follow that. We just do what the higher-ups say. And Bob's like, didn't the higher-ups write this? And he's like, I don't know. I just did what I was told.
Wow.
All right. So, Kyle, did you ever get on the stand?
Yeah, I did. I basically did the same thing as Dave did. Trial is really repetitive. The jury heard the story, I think, like 4 or 5 different times. So by the time I went, they were pretty well versed in the story by this point. The only thing that was really different was my cross-examination, I guess.
And why? How was that different?
Just because they can ask you different questions.
Oh, I see what you mean. What did
Yeah.
you guys think of the jury members? I mean, did you feel like, could you tell, like, oh, this guy definitely likes us and this one doesn't, or
Yeah,
did you have any
you
feelings
can get a pretty
about that?
good feeling. the people that look like they're almost sleeping, those ones, they kind of just sit there with a straight face all day and you don't really know what's happening. That's the worst. But then there was definitely a few people on the jury where you could see, like, say I was telling the story or making a point, and they'd be nodding their heads or just attentive in general. You could tell that they were understanding the story. And you could also tell when the other witnesses were up on the stand that if somebody took a note right after they said something bad about them, or in the security guard's case when he started saying that Dave was swearing at him and that he was just acting really weird, everybody just started taking notes about that. And it was pretty obvious what they were taking notes for.
Did they ever say, did the security guards say why they were evicting you? I mean, did they bring up that you were in Griffin and what Griffin had to say about you? Or why did they say they wanted to bar you throw you out in the first place?
Yeah, it was because they found Dave in Griffin. They actually thought that I was a different player that David played with a couple of years earlier. And they had no idea who I was. They thought that I was this other random guy. So when they asked me, is this your name? I was just extremely stunned and said, yeah, sure, you can call me that if you want. But
well, security never told us what they were doing. They didn't
No, I
even
mean
know.
to the jury. Did they tell the jury why they wanted to 86 you?
Their security guard just said, the pit boss told me to throw these guys out.
Huh.
All right. So the trial happens, and then it goes to jury, and the jury comes back, and what did the jury decide?
One thing I thought was pretty funny was since we were the plaintiffs and we had to prove what happened, Bob got 2 closing arguments and their lawyer got 1. And Bob's first closing argument was about an hour and a half long. And then their lawyer's closing argument was probably 15 minutes. And then Bob came back and did another 15 minutes. So you can kind of tell that Bob he gets really emotional and tries to get all his points across. So then the jury goes back to deliberate, and they came out a little bit over an hour later. And so they had to decide, 1, if Virgin River had false imprisoned me, then 2nd, if they had done the same to Kyle, 3rd, if they were guilty of conversion, which means not cashing my chips, then 4, if they were guilty of conversion against Kyle, and then 5, against me and Kyle separately, were they guilty of punitive damages, which means did they act maliciously, basically just to be mean, just to act maliciously. So the jury came back and said, yes, they false imprisoned me. Yes, they false imprisoned Kyle. Yes, we both deserved punitive damages. Yes, they committed conversion against me, but no, they didn't commit conversion against Kyle. So they awarded me $30,000 and they awarded Kyle $41,000. And after the trial,
that doesn't include the punitive.
Right. And then real quick, after the trial, they said they gave Kyle more because of his whole Canadian thing, and he could have actually been deported. But yeah, they said we both deserve punitive damages, but it was so late in the day that we were just going to start the next morning because then you can call more witnesses and argue some more. So right then we had $71,000 in compensatory damages, and punitive damages can really range from, Bob said he's seen people get 0 in punitive damages, and sometimes you can get up to like 10 times what you got in compensatory. So about an hour later, their lawyer called Bob and said, all right, we're going to offer you guys exactly what you got in compensatory damages, the $71,000. We'll settle right now. We'll pay you within 14 days, and we promise not to appeal. And Bob just said no. Like, that's actually ridiculous.
So they were offering nothing in punitive damages, or
Right.
they're offering $71,000, an extra $71,000.
Well, me and Kyle were a little bit confused. The way I heard it was they were just gonna pay us what we had won in compensatory, but they put the value of not appealing so high that they thought we might take it because we would be scared of an appeal. So Bob said, no, like, we'll just see you tomorrow. So the next morning we woke up and we were about to go to court, and Bob called me and said, they came back and offered $150,000, same deal. They want confidentiality too. But Bob told me he just dismissed that too. And he told their lawyer we wanted $199,999.99. And he said he told that to their lawyer. Their lawyer wanted to take it, and he was going to tell Virgin River to take it. Well, actually, it was Virgin River's insurance company. So Bob just said, all right, I'll call him, I'll tell him, and be ready to go to trial if they don't take it. But he called us about an hour later and said, yep, they took it. Almost $200,000. You get paid within 15 days. They promise not to appeal, and there is no confidentiality. So you can talk about it to whoever you want.
Oh, good.
Now, wait a minute. I was under the impression that first they wanted that, and you said no to the confidentiality
They
part.
did. Their first offer, yes. They wanted confidentiality. They wanted confidentiality on the amount. They couldn't have it confidential on what the jury said because it was already public record, but they didn't want us to talk about the amount. And it actually wasn't even me and Kyle who got the no confidentiality. It was actually Bob, and he just told him no. Like, we don't want confidentiality as part of this. So if you want to settle, you just have to take it.
That's great.
Yeah, they were just like, you know what?
That's really great.
We'll just do it, because we talked to the jury afterwards, and punitives could have got a lot higher, but Virgin River basically said had we not settled, they would have appealed, and we might not have seen a penny for another 3 years.
Well, and there's a danger there, right? There's a gamble if you don't settle. You want to explain that? About the legal fees?
Oh, yeah. Well, the legal fees was very interesting. I did not know this. So our first offer of judgment against Virgin River was $110,000. We said, you give us $110,000, this is over. They said no. They sent back to us, okay, we'll settle for $20,250, and we said no. So those were the two offer of judgments. So if you go to court, had we won less than $20,000, $20,250, me and Kyle would have been on the hook for all their lawyers' fees since they sent that offer of judgment, which Bob estimated would be about $30,000. On the flip side, if we would have won over $110,000, they would have had to pay our legal fees, which would have been about $70,000. So it's kind of this weird dance of offering a settlement that's high enough that they'll take it, but not so low that they can really easily beat it. So had we got appealed...
But now let me ask you this.
Okay.
If you had refused if you had refused to settle, and the total had been more than the $110,000, so far you had $70 in the bank for the compensatory. If it had been over $110,000, would they have had to pay Bob's legal fees, and then Bob would not have been entitled to 40% of the total? In other words, would you have made more money if they had to pay Bob's legal fees?
We weren't actually sure about that. We were... actually, I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to be talking to Bob on the air after we tape this, but before it airs. So,
right.
Right now we don't know, but our listeners will know by the time they hear this interview, which will make us all look stupid at the time, because why couldn't we have learned that? All right, now.
So tell us what the jurors said. You were able to talk to the jurors after this.
Yeah, Kyle, you want to take that one?
Yeah, it was actually pretty interesting because then you could tell who actually liked the case and who was just kind of there on jury duty. There was a few people that were really kind of caught up in the case actually and felt strongly about it. There was one member of the jury actually who said that the way that they were figuring out the damages was they were all just writing down what they thought and then dividing that number or adding them up and then dividing it by 8, just taking an average. And a couple of the guys thought that we didn't get quite enough. So they were ready at the punitive damages phase to the one guy said that he was going to write down $2 million.
Even divided by 8, that's a pretty big number.
Yeah, and he said he wanted to do that just to skew the numbers because he felt like he wasn't really heard in the first stage and really wanted to get his point across in the second stage. So I don't know if that actually would have happened or not, but I thought it was pretty funny to hear.
It definitely would have got appealed at that point.
Does Nevada have a cap on what punitive can be?
Yes, I believe Thea was telling me that it was $300,000 for me at least. I'm not sure if that's because I'm a Canadian or if that's just how much the cap is.
Was there anything else that the jurors said about, things that persuaded them?
Yeah, they said that we seemed like pretty savvy guys, and they didn't feel like we were extremely harmed. They realized that, yeah, our rights were basically stolen from us, but about the emotional distress and stuff, they were kind of hesitant because it's really hard to get that type of emotion out in a courtroom setting, especially when there's
You couldn't get Dave
objecting.
to cry during the court session?
Yeah, like that's basically what you have to do, but that's
Come on, Dave.
extremely hard to do that.
It's going to be 100 thou.
The biggest thing the jury told us afterwards, which made a huge deal in the case, was they didn't. The jury kind of believed there was a third security guard and kind of didn't, but that's not why they said we were false imprisoned. They said in their minds, the moment we became false imprisoned was the moment the security guards told us they called the police. They said to any reasonable person, and in their mind, as soon as someone tells you the police are on their way, you don't feel free to leave. So that's why we were false imprisoned.
Huh. Now, a lot of players in the past have not wanted to sue casinos because they were worried about the exposure, that it would hurt their future prospects for playing. Did you guys have any worries about that?
Personally, I didn't have any worries about that at all. At this point, I'm already in every book that you can imagine. I can't see this hurting me any more than I already am.
Me too. That never even crossed my mind.
That's good. I mean, I'm really happy that you guys did this. I'm happy that you won, and I think the more people that hear, that people are willing to sue and win and win these cases, the more people will do it, and the better it'll be for players all the way around.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing extremely serious happened to us in our hotel room. We didn't get beat up or anything, but if these situations keep happening, it's not really unlikely that maybe one will escalate to the point of where somebody actually does get hurt. So if we can try and stop any of those, then yeah, we're doing a good thing, I guess.
So you ended up settling for $200,000 less a penny. When that offer was on the table, did you consider holding out for $300 or something?
No. The people that we were dealing with, or that Virgin River was dealing with at the insurance company, I'm pretty sure she made it pretty well known that she only had the authority to grant up to 200,000. I think that was the significance of that number.
Yeah. So had we been like,
said,
yeah,
no, we need 220,000 even, they might have said, okay, well, I don't have the authority to pay out that much, so it looks like it's just going to trial. Or maybe they would have been able to change their mind if they had to pitch it to a higher-up member at the insurance company or something. So once it got to there, we just said, we'll take it.
Yeah, because Kyle and I had talked the night before after we got our compensatory, but before punitive, and we were like, if we get close to 200, we might as well take it. I personally think we could have got a lot more in punitives, but because of what we do, the time value of money for us each getting 60,000 right now is worth a lot more than us getting maybe 100,000 in 3 years. So just getting the money and getting it over with was worth it for me.
Are you still out there hole carding and as partners, at least occasionally, or now all this notoriety, you've gone out and decided to become a bowling professional, maybe?
I think Kyle's trying to become an engineer up in Canada. I'm not sure. Okay, maybe not. But no,
but
yeah.
you guys still play.
Oh, the night of the trial, we're still hole carding. Yeah.
The hardest part was trying not to play during trial.
Why? Why did you not want to play during trial?
Well,
presumably they had a readable dealer at the Casablanca.
Yeah, Bob and Thea basically told us to stay out of jail while trial was going on.
That's probably good legal advice.
Yeah, and I figured that going into a place that I've previously been trespassed wasn't a good idea while I'm going to trial for something very similar. So
right.
we just took it easy.
But the Casablanca is across the street, has different different
the trial
ownership.
was in Las Vegas.
Casablanca's owned by the same people. It's the Eureka that's across the street. And they're owned by different
you guys never called the gaming commission, did you, about the uncashed chips?
No, actually we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been my first call, actually.
It probably
maybe even while I was in the hotel room, being held.
Not everybody has the gaming control board on their speed dial, Richard.
I do.
No, they should.
I do, actually.
They should. I mean,
now.
people should have gaming control and Bob Nersesian's number on their speed dial.
I definitely have both. I think after we met with Bob and signed our legal paperwork, we just decided to let him handle it. And that was good enough for us. Sure. Thinking back now, I don't know why we didn't call gaming. They probably would have. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, the only problem is it's Mesquite, so it might have taken 2 hours for them to get there.
That's true.
All right. We are out of time. This was an interesting interview. Kyle and David, thank you very much for sharing with us. We wish you continued success. I've heard rumors that David is having a master's thesis or something, which may be something that he's back on the show in several months to talk about. So if he ever graduates, which apparently is going to happen. So thank you both very much. Thank you, Richard. Good night, everybody. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.